Welcome to Redacted Reality. If the allure of the shadowy, cryptic, and mystical tales captivate you, then please subscribe and hang around. Chapter 5: The Fate of Beatrice Langley. After Peter Langley's sudden disappearance, Beatrice carried on as if nothing had changed. Clad in her finest silks and adorned with meticulously chosen jewels, she continued to host extravagant soirees in her grand estate, her laughter echoing through the candlelit halls as though she hadn't a care in the world. To the townsfolk, she embodied resilience, the picture of grace under pressure. Whispers of Peter's departure were conveniently dismissed as a speculation about a man overwhelmed by business troubles or marital strain. Beatrice, for her part, would offer vague, sympathetic smiles when asked about her husband, occasionally sighing and remarking, "He was always such a restless soul." But beneath the surface of her polished exterior, Beatrice's life had taken a darker, more consuming turn. Freed from the constraints of her marriage, she deepened her involvement in the occult, solidifying her role as the leader of the coven. Whitaker's influence hovered closer now, his presence lending undeniable weight to their rituals. Together, they worked to expand the coven's reach, initiating women from neighboring towns who were carefully selected for both their influence and discretion. Beatrice, with her icy charm and magnetic poise, became a recruiter of unmatched skill, equally adept at turning heads in the ballroom as she was commanding reverence in the woods. Still, rumors began to swirl in quiet corners where gossip thrived. Those closest to Beatrice whispered about her increasingly erratic behavior. At first, it was small things, barely noticeable. A seamstress mentioned that when fitting Beatrice for a gown, her hand had brushed against the lady's skin and found it icy cold, despite the fire roaring in the hearth. A servant claimed to have seen her standing in front of a gilded mirror for hours at a time, her lips moving in silent conversation with no one else in the room. And then there were the sounds. Maids refused to enter certain hallways after hearing faint whispers behind locked doors, whispers that seemed to echo even after the house had fallen silent. Outwardly, Beatrice maintained control, but her private world began to show fractures. The rituals with the coven grew more elaborate and dangerous. Driven by the ever-escalating ambitions of Whitaker, the judge demanded greater sacrifices, deeper submissions to the forces they sought to unlock. The coven, once a tightly knit circle bound by secrecy and trust, began to strain under the weight of fear and suspicion. Women who had pledged themselves to Beatrice whispered of being plagued by terrifying dreams, but darkness that seemed to bleed from the rituals into their everyday lives. A farmer's wife who had recently joined was found wandering the woods in a daze, her hands and dress covered in mud as she muttered incoherently about the eyes in the trees. She vanished the following week. Beatrice was not immune to the toll exacted by the dark pursuits. Though she remained as elegant as ever in public, her composure began to fray. There were moments at gatherings where she would lapse into strange silences, her gaze distant as if listening to a voice only she could hear. Once, at a midsummer ball, a guest swore he saw Beatrice's shadow moving independently of her, stretching across the wall and lingering long after she had stepped out of the room. The story spread quietly, dismissed by most but whispering with increasing unease among those sensitive to the odd events that seemed to follow her. Her paranoia began to grow. Beatrice began dismissing servants without cause, claiming they had been spying on her. She insisted on triple locking the door at night and demanded that mirrors be covered in certain rooms, claiming their reflections distorted reality in ways that disturbed her. Despite her growing unease, she refused to curtail her connection to the judge. If anything, their partnership grew even stronger. It was said that late at night, Beatrice's carriage could often be seen heading towards the wooded paths leading to the Whitakers' estate, its lamps unlit as it rolled through the darkness like a phantom. Her downfall, as it often is with those folks who walk the edge of power, came not with an explosion, but with a series of quiet implosions. The fractures within the coven widened, Certain members, once loyal, began to question the wisdom of Beatrice's leadership and her unrelenting trust in Whitaker. They spoke of strange occurrences that seemed to spiral out of control after rituals held too close to the full moon, of unnatural lights and the fleeting silhouettes of things that didn't belong in the human world. These murmurs grew into dissent, and in their fear, some women began to distance themselves from Beatrice, claiming illness or withdrawing to the safety of their homes. Beatrice, desperate to maintain control, became more reckless. She doubled down on her faith in the Coven's work, pushing for more potent rituals and binding those who remained to her with oaths they dare not break. But with every ritual, the cost seemed to grow. Crops in the fields near her estate began to wither inexplicably. Dogs refused to go near the property, whining and cowering if forced too close. And stories of missing livestock, gutted and arranged into gruesome patterns in the woods near Whitaker's land, spread fear throughout the community, though no one dared confront the judge or Beatrice. Perhaps her greatest mistake was underestimating the reach of the darkness she had invited into her life. There were whispers of an incident during one of the rituals, something she summoned that refused to be controlled. Whatever it was, it left her visibly shaken. Those closest to her noted that her once glacial poise now seemed brittle, as though a single misstep could shatter her. The famed blue eyes that had once captivated anyone who looked their way now gleamed with the feral intensity, as if she were constantly teetering on the edge of terror and ecstasy. Her public life faltered as the whispers grew louder. Invitations to her gatherings dwindled, and those who attended stayed silent about what they witnessed there. The once vivid social butterfly became a ghost of her former self, her face pale, her movements erratic. Eventually, she withdrew entirely from public view, retreating to her estate where a few loyal servants tended to her. They, too, were said to leave the property trembling, their stories full of strange noises, flickering lights in the woods, and the faint sound of chanting that seemed to come from nowhere. The end of Beatrice Langley's story is as much a mystery as the woman herself. One stormy autumn evening, her estate was found empty, its doors thrown wide open, and the air inside heavy with the scent of sulfur. Servants who arrived the next morning discovered her rooms undisturbed, as though she had merely stepped out and vanished into thin air. No sign of her body, her belongings, or the coven was ever found. The property was left to rot, overtaken by ivy and silence, a haunting reminder of the woman and the secrets she took with her. Some said she fled, pursued by forces she couldn't control. Others whispered that she paid the ultimate price for her ambition, consumed by the darkness she had courted for so long. Whatever the truth, Beatrice Langley's name faded from polite conversation, replaced by ghost stories and warnings told in hushed tones by firelight. And in the woods near Whitaker's estate, on certain nights when the air is heavy and still, some claim you can still hear a woman's voice calling, faint and distant, pleading for something no human words can describe.